Welcome to this episode of the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I feature Olympians, CEOs, disruptors, authors, professional athletes, and the best of the best, where they share their stories of resilience with my lens on leadership and culture. Let's get started. Greetings and welcome to this episode of the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I bring you the best, and today is no exception. So let me first tell you 3 things you're going to learn in this episode before I introduce him. 1, how leveraging energy is going to attract abundance. 2, by incorporating a few simple habits, how you can create more energy in your life. And 3, how your energy leaves an imprint on the world. Simon Alexander Ong is a best-selling author, award-winning coach, and an international speaker. His best-selling book, Energize, has been endorsed by my idol, Simon Sinek, and Marie Forleo, amongst others. He is a luminary thinker with me in Cartier's latest collab called Red Box Me. He is wise, he is fun, he is engaging. You are going to learn loads. Welcome to the show, Simon. So happy you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Lindsay, and what a kind and lovely welcome.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. It is an absolute joy having you here. So I start every show the same way, and I always ask our guests to please share a little bit about your story.
Sure. So I grew up here in the UK to 2 Malaysian Chinese parents, and I always had this belief that was instilled in me that success would be defined by my job title.
Mm-hmm.
So when I graduated from college, the focus was on being either a banker, a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant. Maybe something you can relate to, actually, when you look back on how you grew up as a child. And it meant that my first career was in the world of finance. So I did that for nearly 10 years. But the financial crisis was the catalyst that got me thinking about what I really wanted out of life. You see, when you look at society, it is easy to observe how exhausted and tired people are.
Oh, yeah.
And what I noticed is that people are exhausted not because they are physically doing too much, but because 1, they are doing too little of the things that bring them joy. And 2nd, they are often running someone else's race.
Yeah.
So when I sat down to really go inward to understand what success meant to me, the challenge was then to build my life around those answers. And so on the side of my full-time job, I started to explore the world beyond this bubble of finance, to explore my curiosities and to just see what else I could do aside from just going into a job that was quite unfulfilling for me. And so that led me into the world of coaching. I eventually resigned from my corporate job. I pursued this career in coaching. And if you told me at the time that I could build a successful business just doing one-to-one coaching, I would have been very happy. I would have taken that. But the thing is, what I realized is that once you start to pursue things that you really enjoy, more begins to open up. And so the coaching led to speaking, the speaking led to media work, the media work led to a book deal with Penguin to write Energize. And more recently, I'm involved in advising startup companies and co-founding businesses as well.
I love all of that. And I can relate to so much of this. I mean, I spent 25 years in corporate America, and at age 50, I made a giant pivot and went out on my own and started coaching. And now I'm speaking, and I wrote a book, and I have a second book coming out. So similar path, not quite as great as you've done it, but so inspiring. So just out of curiosity, what did your family say when you decided that finance wasn't for you? Because I know a lot of, at least for my journey, my parents were like, couldn't this be a side hustle? Do you really have to dig in? I don't know if this is safe. Let's talk about the security. So what was their reaction?
The story I would like to say is that they were very supportive and they were right behind me from the start. But the reality was anything but. My mum unfortunately passed when I was 17. So she was the emotional glue in the family. And so losing her meant that the dynamic in the family was very different. My dad was a very strict parent, very focused on results. And he was raising 2 boys, had to take on both the mother and father role once our mum departed. And I knew that if I was to tell him that I'm handing in my resignation in order to pursue the unknown of the entrepreneurial path, there would have been a lot of questions. He would have said things such as, why are you giving up this career that you spent so many years investing through getting the degree at college to uh, going through all of these jobs that you've been through for something where you don't know if you're going to get paid month to month.
Right.
And knowing that, the reality of what happened, Lindsay, is that when I quit for just over 2 years, I didn't actually tell my dad I'd quit. So he was abroad at the time, and he would call me on Skype. So we were all using Skype back then. Now
Yeah.
we use Zoom, but he was using Skype to stay in touch with me. And every time he called me and he said, Simon, how's the job going?
Oh,
I, I would be buying myself time by saying things such as, Dad, the economy is tough and I'm still working hard towards that promotion, but it's a little out of my control because it depends on how my performance review goes when we next have it. And he would just say, keep focused, keep working hard. I'm sure you'll get it at some point. And so I was just buying myself time for a couple of years.
yeah.
And once I started to get a little success, because here was the chicken and egg. On the one hand, my dad and my family didn't want me to go into something unknown
Right.
because of the risks, because of the uncertainty. But on the other side, if they see some success, they're like, oh, you should go for it. You're doing
Yeah.
well. But the irony here is you can't achieve the success without taking risk,
That's right.
without taking some courage into the unknown. So once I started sharing a little more of what I was doing when I achieved some success, he saw it on my social media and he began sharing it. And so for me, that was a nice indication that
Sure.
he was interested in what I was doing and was supportive of the path I took. Who knows? Maybe he did know I'd quit before,
Yeah.
but the fact is I delayed it a little bit
Yeah.
until I was comfortable enough to tell him that I've been doing this thing on the side, and it's starting to see some good results, and I'm
Yeah.
deciding to put more energy and attention into it.
That's amazing. Well, bravo for getting his support. I know how important that is to have people in your corner
Mm,
and have that board of advisors, those
yeah.
people that are going to help, check you. I think our parents tend to put their own insecurities onto their
Mm,
kids, and certainly that
mm,
happened with me. So I want to pivot a little bit and talk
mm,
more about the concept of energy. And this is actually a perfect moment because you were
mm,
energizing your purpose and
mm,
talking about what was meaningful to you, what made a difference
mm,
to you. So let's just talk a little bit about the concept of energy and how it relates to abundance and risk taking. And
mm.
I love your perspective on this.
Sure. So first of all, what's important to understand about energy is that it's split into four dimensions. So
Mhm,
you have physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual.
mhm.
For a lot of us, we tend to focus exclusively on physical. So if you think back to New Year resolutions at the beginning of each year,
I'm gonna
chances
work
are
out.
people would be saying things such as, yeah, workouts, working on your fitness
Diet.
levels,
Mhm.
improving your diet, getting better balance between work and rest. A lot of this stuff is physical.
Yeah.
But if we neglect the emotional, mental, and spiritual, we're not looking at it in a holistic way.
Right.
Now, physical is important because it is the foundation, just like you need a good foundation for structure. Otherwise, when it faces challenges from the weather, it is not going to hold up.
Right.
And this is the same with physical energy. It's your sleep, it's your movement, and your nutrition.
Mhm.
Once you have that in place, you have a fantastic baseline to then focus on all the other things.
Mhm.
And this is because when you are healthy, you will have lots of hopes, dreams, and goals.
Right.
And that is actually a very privileged position to be in. When you are sick, you have only one goal: to be well again.
That's right.
So once you've got that in place, you can then look at the other three dimensions. So mental energy is really about three things. It's
Mhm.
about your ability to focus in a world that is getting increasingly distracted and noisy. It's your ability to cultivate a mindset of resilience and the ability to bounce back from unexpected events. And the third part is creativity. We are all born with creative energy. The irony of this is that we think we are not creative. We think
Mhm.
creativity is reserved for the artists
Right.
and the poets amongst us. But we all are born with innate creativity. As we grow older, it just becomes suppressed, or we don't get the opportunity to express it.
Mhm.
And for those who come back to me and say, but Simon, I'm not creative. I said, well, look at children. You were once a child. All children are creative. And I see that in my 4-year-old daughter as well.
Yeah.
Emotional energy is about relationships. So it's the relationship we have with ourselves, since you are the person that you will speak to the most in your lifetime. And
Mm,
it's also the relationship you have with your loved ones, with the people you spend time with, and in business, your partners.
mm,
All of these relationships play important roles in your own development. And then the final dimension is spiritual energy, which is all about meaning and purpose.
mm.
So, to give an example of how you know if you are low or high in spiritual energy, when you are low, you are likely doing work that goes against your values
Yeah.
and does not give you the space to express your talent.
And you're probably
And
not good at it either.
absolutely, it's like being a square peg in a round hole.
Mhm.
And so, what tends to occur when I speak to people is it manifests itself physically
Yeah.
through that feeling of tension in your stomach on a Sunday night or Monday morning.
Mm,
That's the manifestation physically of being low on spiritual energy. Now,
mm,
when you're high on spiritual energy, you are more likely to experience states of flow. And
mm.
that is because you're doing the work that makes you feel alive. You're doing the work that allows you to express your potential
Yeah.
in however that medium is. So, whether that is speaking, whether that's running a business, whether that is doing something that allows you to channel your talents towards a goal that means something to you.
Oh, I love how you broke that down. And I work with my coach, and she
Mm,
shared at the beginning that um, entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey.
yeah.
And I love that the spiritual side of energy has become part of our vernacular now.
Mm,
And
mm.
at least where I am, and it might just be because that's where I am and that's the energy that I'm attracting, I'm seeing so much more of it. But I really do think that leaders need to check themselves. And
Mm.
you work with a lot of leaders. Are you seeing a shift where they're having this conversation and they're getting aligned with their purpose?
Absolutely, certainly more than I had before.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to understanding that you cannot change anything about who you are and the way you lead unless you have an awareness of how
Yeah.
you lead and the way you are. So when we think about spiritual energy, and you mentioned your coach saying entrepreneurship is a
Mm.
spiritual journey, it
Yeah.
absolutely is, because entrepreneurship is a path to getting to know yourself.
Yes.
And when we think about wisdom, wisdom begins with knowing yourself.
Hmm.
And as you know yourself, you can begin to connect to your purpose, to your mission, to your vision, and towards understanding what must improve.
Mm.
And in order to actually elevate your spiritual energy and deepen your level of awareness, you have to have a degree of humility.
Oh, yeah.
If you are constantly operating from a place of ego, you're never
Mm.
really going to be able to address this. But when you come from a place of humility, you're always seeking to learn.
Yeah.
You're always seeking to not only learn about your present situation and reflect on your decisions, your thoughts, but also to learn from other people
Yeah.
because you understand that you cannot know everything. You
Mm.
can't know.
No.
And so you open your mind up to all of the teachers that come into our life.
You hit on it before, and I'll say that my favorite people that I've ever worked with were the ones who were allowed to be creative. And
Mm,
that being allowed to be creative comes from a space of psychological safety, and the best leaders create that
mm,
space. And when
mm,
you can offer that room for people to think differently, act differently, do differently, real magic occurs. And that
mm,
energy I find to be very contagious. But not just that, we perform. So
mm.
I loved creating those environments. I loved being a part of those environments. And I always encourage leaders to do that. I think it's so, so important to let your
Mm.
people do what they were hired for and give them space to try new things. So I love
Absolutely.
that
That
you.
that space is so powerful. I don't know if you come across the experiment, Lindsay, done by Peter Skillman, a designer and
Mm,
engineer. In
yes,
the early
talk about it.
2000s, he did this challenge. It was 18 minutes,
Hmm.
and you had four objects. You had 20 pieces of dried spaghetti.
Yes.
You had a standard sized marshmallow, a yard of tape, and a yard of string. And in the 18 minutes, you, in a group of four people, had to build the tallest structure with the sole focus being to get that marshmallow at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And there were three groups of people he brought together. The first was a group of CEOs, the second was a group of MBA students, and the third was a group of kindergarten children. Now, logic tells us that on paper, the MBA students or the CEOs would win because they have the greater experience,
Sure.
they've got greater knowledge individually that they could apply to this challenge. But by the end, they saw that it was the kindergarten children on average that won.
Yeah.
And that was because they went straight into action, they learned, they got their hands dirty, and they didn't waste all of that early part of the time focused on ideation, overthinking, planning, and what
And
psychologists
roles,
would call
choosing
status
roles,
games.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
choosing roles,
Yeah.
playing status games. And so the children didn't care who was CEO of Spaghetti Inc., whereas the MBA students and CEOs were concerned about, can I share my idea?
Mm-hmm.
Who's leading the project?
Mm-hmm.
Is my idea better than his or hers? And so they're so caught up
Yeah.
in this sort of game that they fail to take action fast enough.
It's amazing. I love that example. I've heard you talk about it before, and I never get tired of that story. So let's help the audience with some practical energy tips that they can
Hmm,
leverage now. I think one of my pet peeves is I
sure.
really dislike when people say, "Oh, I'm so tired." And you
Hmm.
ask, "How are you?" "Oh, I'm tired." I just think that's such a turnoff. And so I know you talk about that. What's one way to combat, well, you could stop using that phrase, but what's one
Yeah.
way to feel more energy?
Sure. So if we look at the dimensions, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, I'll share a few that would impact these areas. So if I look at physical energy, it begins with something so simple we overlook it, which is to get a sufficient night's rest.
Yeah.
Now, your most productive day will always begin with getting sufficient rest at night. If you don't, you're going to be playing catch up for the remainder of the day. So if you can put together a sleep routine where you can get what's needed in terms of your rest and wake up focused, that is going to have a huge influence on your
Yeah.
level of energy. Now, what also helps with this, if you're looking at implementing a habit, is to plan your day the night before. Studies show this has an impact in two ways.
I agree.
First, you increase the probability that you're going to have a deep sleep. You're going to have quality sleep. You don't go into your bed with all the stresses and the worries about tomorrow because you've downloaded them onto paper.
Yep.
You've been able to plan ahead of time. Second, when you wake up the next day, you know exactly what your priorities are.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about, what do I have to do today? How am I going to get to that event I have to get to? What
Mhm.
am I going to wear? You've already planned all of this ahead of
Mhm.
time. So sleep is essential if you
Yeah.
want to elevate your energy and be more productive. And then it's moving your body. Lots of people tell me, Simon, I don't have the time to move my body. And I say, well, let's put this into perspective. We all have 24 hours in a day. Now,
Mhm.
that's a given for each of us. If you were to move your body for just 1 hour a day, that is 4.2% of your day. Now, if
Too
you can't
much.
dedicate 4.2% towards living a healthy, long life, that tells me it's not about time anymore.
That's just
It's about
priorities.
priorities.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because if it matters to you enough, you will make time for it. So that's two very quick things we can do that will impact our physical energy. When it comes to emotional energy, a very quick 3-step exercise you can do right now is number one, think of somebody that you can be truly grateful for.
Mm.
Somebody that has impacted your life in some way or has shaped you into the person you are today.
Mhm.
Second is to write down why in as much detail as you can. And third is to pick up the phone, call that person, and
Mhm.
read out what you wrote in step two.
Oh, so good. So
Now,
good. A
now
friend of
here's the
mine,
thing.
a friend of
Yeah.
mine turned 44 today, and
Uh-huh.
his mission on his birthday, he doesn't like birthdays, but he said, "Today I'm going to send 44 video messages to people that have made a huge
Amazing.
difference in my life." And I
Yeah.
just got goosebumps reading his post, going, "Oh my God, he is going to be bursting with gratitude and joy just thinking about these people and how much joy they've given him." And it's just going to
Mm.
ripple across
Ab-
his universe.
Absolutely. And the key here with what your friend's done is he's on a video message. I said to pick up the phone and call someone. even if that step is a little uncomfortable for you, what you want to do at a minimum is to drop them a voice note. The
Yep.
key is they hear your voice at a
Right.
minimum,
That's right.
because your voice carries energy. And when they can hear the emotion for your voice, that's how they connect with your
Mhm.
message. Whereas if you were to send it in a letter, an email, or a text, it's quite difficult
The
to
tone
connect
isn't
with
right.
emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's open to interpretation.
That's right.
So that's a great exercise that you can do now to elevate your
Mhm.
emotional energy. When it comes to your mental energy, the key is to shift your environment and also to create space in your diary for what matters the most.
Mhm.
Because the big mistake we commit when it comes to productivity is we think we have to be busy and we have to be doing more in
Right.
order to feel productive. The fact is, productivity is less about doing more and more about doing less, simplifying your schedule so you can focus on the things that matter.
Yeah.
And so, if you were to look at your schedule now, I'm pretty sure there are things in your diary that you can start saying no to,
Yep.
that you don't have to do, but for whatever reason you said yes. And
Well,
what you want
and
to,
the simple act of blocking your calendar for time
yeah,
with your children or time with your spouse or Pilates or taking a walk, you have to protect your time because someone will just steal it.
time blocking is so important. I
Yeah.
mean, we are quick to say yes to the calendar invite for a business meeting. We're quick to say yes to a
Yeah.
social event in the calendar, but we're not so quick at saying yes to me time,
Mhm.
to blocking out time in our diary. And even if we do, Lindsay, even if we do block in our calendar, we don't tend to give it the same importance as a business meeting.
Mhm.
And so sometimes if, I don't know, something else pops up, we suddenly sacrifice that time we'd already blocked in order to do that other thing.
Yeah.
And so we need to treat that time we have blocked for ourselves just to be just as important as if it was a business meeting.
Yeah.
And so
I
you're
agree.
protecting it and giving it weight. And that will help you with your mental energy.
Oh,
And
you're so
then
good. Keep going.
yeah, and then it's your environment. Simple shifts in your environment can elevate your energy. So, if, for example, you are in the habit of planning a week ahead of time, instead of doing it in the same room you've always been doing it in, maybe change your environment. Maybe do it outdoors. Do it in a place that inspires you.
Mhm.
And so, when you come to planning your week ahead, you're doing it in a space filled with inspiration.
Yeah. I love that. So that was the perfect segue into one of my favorite questions, which is what inspires you?
What inspires me? What inspires me the most right now, Lindsay, is simply observing ordinary people doing extraordinary things,
Mm,
because it is a great reminder to me that anybody, when they set their mind to it, can achieve their wildest dreams.
yeah.
Anyone, literally. But we have to believe in ourselves first. We can question our abilities, we can give in to our fears and doubts. But if you start believing in you, trusting in your ability and capability,
Mm,
you can achieve far more than you ever imagined.
yeah. I totally agree with that. And I will tell you, since leaving corporate, I was fired, which is why I left corporate,
Mm,
which I thought I was the only executive on earth to ever be fired. But if I wasn't shoved out of that nest, I wouldn't have taken the risks to go
mm,
out on my own. I wouldn't have written my book. I wouldn't have started this show. I wouldn't have had a billboard in Times Square. I wouldn't have been in a second book. Like all of these things have happened because
mm,
I believed in myself and I trusted my advisors and I wanted to take a chance and it's
mm,
so fulfilling. Am I rolling in money yet? Not yet, but it's coming. It's good,
mm,
and it feels really good. And all
mm.
of those energy aspects, the four that you spoke about are in balance.
Yeah,
So there's always room for improvement, but everything feels good. And when you feel good, you have an opportunity to be really creative and invite more
yeah.
opportunity in. So I love
Ab-
that.
Absolutely. You set the stage for beautiful things to happen.
Yeah.
And the reason you are able to, when you address those four dimensions of energy,
Mm,
is because what I came to realize is that people do not buy your products, your services, or your ideas as much as they buy your energy.
yeah.
They buy into your
True.
energy because they feel like this is someone I want to do business with.
That's
This
right.
is somebody I want to collaborate with. And Maya Angelou said it best when she said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget the
Yeah,
way
how
you
you
made
made
them
them feel.
feel."
I
And
agree.
that
Yeah.
feeling is an exchange of energy. That's a feeling you get when you're exposed to someone's energy.
I love that. Okay, so what would you like your legacy to be?
My legacy, I would love it to be that everything I did inspired people to not only see their world differently, but to inspire them to write a better story.
Mhm.
That there is always a better story inside of us waiting to be unleashed on the world.
I love that. That's beautiful. That's great. What is next for Simon?
What is next for Simon? More speaking internationally. I just got back recently from speaking in Dubai and Ireland. I'm going to be traveling to Singapore next week to speak. And later this year, which is part of my own creative thinking process, I am collaborating with a chef here in London, where we are designing a 6-course dinner experience, with each course inspired by a message from my book. So, in essence, we're bringing together a self-help book and food and creating an event, something that I've not seen before,
I've never seen
where
that.
the story
Brilliant.
the story is brought to life through immersing your senses in food and the experience of food, and you get the message told through your experience of eating.
Oh, Simon, I love that so much. And that is such a testament to creativity and
Mm,
what can be done. This is something I've never seen before.
mm,
I should say I'm a diehard foodie. I'm not a great cook, but I really love food and I love the experience of enjoying
mm,
food and the memories created when you're eating someplace special. So you
mm.
are going to create something so magical for everyone that comes. So, oh my gosh, you have to tell me how it goes. It sounds
I'll
amazing.
definitely share more, Lindsay. And I think that
Oh, make
the,
make
the, the thing
film
is,
it, please.
any one of us can access this creativity.
Yeah.
And I always get asked, how do I activate my own creativity? And for me, it begins with diversity of input. There
Yes.
is power in diversity. If you are always listening to the same people, you can't think any different. So start thinking about how can you diversify your inputs. So as an example, in the circle of people I spend time with, there's a film director, there's a chef, there's a bartender, there's a tech entrepreneur, there's an investor, there's a
Yeah.
musician. And so what I get from each of them is going to be very different, but they all share the same values as me, but they're operating in different industries. Now, naturally, that's going to make me a creative thinker because I'm seeing what they do well in their industry.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, how can we collaborate? Or what can I take from what you're doing into my own industry? And that's how innovation and originality is born.
I love that. And I actually just talked about this yesterday. Um, when I was leading big sales organizations, someone asked me, they're like,
Mm,
what was your hiring practice?
mm,
And my hiring practice was, I am not the smartest person in the room. I want to
yeah.
surround myself with smart people and diverse minds. And I
Mm,
want experiences that I don't have brought to the table
yeah.
because we are going to try different things and think about things differently.
Mm,
I didn't want a bunch of people that looked and sounded like me. And
mm,
it made for some phenomenal performance,
mm,
some really great camaraderie, and a ton of learning and a lot of
mm,
fun. I mean, part of the joy of having a diverse
mm,
team or having a diverse board of personal advisors is the stories and is
mm,
the culture and all of the life experiences that you didn't have.
mm,
That's what makes us all better and keeps us growing and
mm.
broadens our minds. So I agree wholeheartedly. You are totally my people. So how do people find you, Simon?
Sure. I'm on all the major social media platforms, but the three I use the most are YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram. My handle on Instagram is at Simon Alexander O.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Simon, you have been a delight. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and energy with us. This has been such an incredible episode. Guys, if you enjoyed this, this is such an important thing for you to do. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a 5-star review at Apple or Spotify. I love to bring you these guests. The more reviews we get, the higher we rank, the more experts I can bring like Simon to the show. So Simon, thank you. Everyone lead with heart, take care of each other, and have a great day. Are you ready to elevate your leadership style and create an exceptional workplace that stands out from the crowd? I'm here to introduce you to a game-changing resource that will transform the way you lead and shape your company culture. It's time to embrace the power of top-down culture. This practical guide empowers your leadership for lasting success, helping you create a workplace where everyone thrives. Get top-down culture today, and let's reshape the future of leadership together. Thanks for listening to this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel or consider leaving a 5-star review and a great rating at Spotify or Apple. Thank you so much for your support. Have a great day.